We are live, so welcome to Career Lounge Live, helping you to be a greater you. This lounge is designed to help middle and high school students to prepare for their life after high school. So you know what they say, failing to plan is planning to fail. So today's topic is planning for getting a job. So I want to invite you to invite your friends to the Facebook group. If you're already a member and they are already a member, tag them into this live so they can tune in. If you are catching us on the replay, please enter hashtag replay in the chat box so we know that you are here with us. So while we wait a little bit for others to join, we want to thank you, all of you that are tuning in, and we want to give a special thanks to the Career Lounge Live sponsor, EXL, a leading data analytics and digital operations and solutions company. If you want to learn more about EXL, you just have to go to exlservice.com. Thanks to their sponsorship, we are able to bring this lounge to you at no cost. So thank you once again, all of you that are joining here live in the Facebook group. If you're watching in YouTube, please hashtag replay in the chat box, but more importantly, share this information with others and invite them to see this information and to share with their high schoolers. So remember, if you are here, tag your friend so they can join live, and hashtag replay, hashtag live if you're watching live. So today we are, sharing with you about getting that job, that first job. But before we talk a little bit about that, we want to talk to you a little bit about our organization. L.O.V.E Youth is a 501c3 nonprofit organization providing programs for youth throughout Central Florida. Our mission is to encourage youth to embrace their self-worth and values life lessons in order to maximize their potential. So we need to understand that, decisions can be made by applying a process, and that learning this process is critical to making all important decisions in life, including those about career choices. That's why we're bringing this to you. So today we're going to talk a little bit about that. And, what are the characteristics related to a job? What are those steps that you need to do to get a job, the interview, the documents that you need, and all that. But before we kick off today's topic, we want to learn a little bit more about our facilitators. So today we have with us Amy Lupinski and Mike Hurley. So I want you guys to tell us a little bit about yourself. Why did you choose your current career, what you're doing, your mission, your goals, anything you want to share about your background. So Amy and Mike, the floor is yours.
Sure. Thanks so much. Mike, I'll go first and then I'll turn it over to you. I have had a long career in human resources. Although I'm fairly new to EXL, I've been here about 10 months. I have spent most of my career in human resources. Before EXL, I worked for IBM for many years, and what led me into human resources is I had a business degree, and I really wanted to pair that with sort of the human side. And so I kind of got my first job in human resources, and I was able to move into kind of some new and different roles within that career path. And 20 something years later, I'm still in human resources, which is good. I feel like we have a good balance between really looking at the business, but also looking at the human dimension as well, which is so critical, especially as we've come out of COVID and realized that interpersonal connectivity is super important. But personally, I live in Connecticut. I have 3 sons, a 20-year-old who is in college and has a couple of part-time jobs, and then 2 high schoolers, a 17-year-old and an almost 16-year-old on Thursday. And they're currently going through the same process. So I'm well versed right now in kind of helping them look for jobs and getting prepared, both with applying and then the interview process. So I can share some of the things that the trials and tribulations that we've gone through, and hopefully that will help all of you. Mike, I'll turn it over to you.
Cool, thanks, Amy. Hi, everybody. Happy Tuesday afternoon, evening. My name is Mike Hurley. I am based in Chicago, Illinois, and where it's almost spring here. I have been working for a long time. So tomorrow is my 59th birthday. And so I've been working since I was 15. And I have 4 children. So like Amy, I've gone through the process of helping my kids apply to schools and apply for jobs. And yesterday I was helping my out-of-town daughter register a car. So there's all kinds of interesting opportunities to learn new things. My role at EXL is I'm a senior AVP of in healthcare, and I help large health insurance companies solve difficult problems with data and analytics. So, but if that sounds fancy, I apologize. How I started my career is really as a janitor at a shopping mall, pulling weeds and cleaning windows. And I've had a number of jobs, including starting my own company. I started and sold 5 companies. So I've got a different experience around jobs and different perspectives as well. So I look forward to talking to you all. Look forward to any questions you have in a chat, and look forward to participating with Amy. So
Awesome. So happy birthday in advance.
Thank you.
So I appreciate you being here today in your pre-birthday.
Yes.
Birthday Eve.
So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna share my screen so we can jump into today's topic, which is planning for getting a job. You know, that scary part, the interviews and all that, but really it's not that scary when we plan, right?
That's right. So Mike, let me kick it off, and then I'll throw it over to you for some additional insights. But let's first talk about what we want to get out of today. So I think as Mike and I are here, if we can help you do a couple of things, I'll call it a success at the end of this. One is starting to think about what you might want to do and how you think about what kind of job that you would like. And then there's the process of applying and then interviewing for that job. And so what we'll cover is sort of all of the preparations that go into actually getting a job. I think that as you think about it, some of you may be looking for a job, like a long-term job, like after high school. You may want to, find your first full-time job. Some of you may be looking for a part-time job for the summer or after school. And so I think we can go through a number of those different scenarios because it is a little bit different in terms of what you might want to look for. So if you go to the next chart, let's get into, how do you really start thinking about what kind of job that you want? What are some of those characteristics that you're looking for? And I think it really depends on what you want to get out of the job. I do think that, and it's not advancing on my screen, but maybe it's advanced on yours. Okay, thank you. So let's think about some of the characteristics. If you're, planning to go to college and you have a career in mind, it would be great if you could get a job sort of in that area. So if you are thinking about education, you want to be a teacher, maybe you look for like a camp counselor type of role. If you want to go into like the entertainment industry, you know, there's always plenty of kind of summer jobs in the entertainment area. So while it's great to kind of start to think about that, it's also not necessary. I mean, some of this is really what is available. And as you can see from the list here, it's, you know, how close is it to your home? What's the travel requirements? What are kind of the hours? And so you can think about it in terms of, it'd be great if you got experience in the kind of the career area that you're thinking of, but it's also casting a wide net to really think about what types of opportunities there are. And you will always learn something. As Mike said, you know, he had a number of different jobs. I had a number of different jobs as a young adult, and you take away something from all of those. But you can think about the types of organizations that you want to work for, like a for-profit company or a nonprofit. Some of the experiences that you may get is more a volunteer type of activity as well. And those experiences will all benefit you in either applying to colleges or post high school experiences. So think about some of these things as you're really thinking about what kind of job that you may want to get, if it's a part-time or a full-time role. And then let's go into, then what do you do? So you've kind of narrowed down like maybe a field or an organization. I think there's some approaches to how you might find out about a job, or you may want to really kind of look in at one direction. So Dahlia, if you could go to the next chart, let's talk about how to find it. So there's a lot of online tools. I know my 20-year-old had a lot of success with Indeed.com. And so I think that's a great avenue. There's a couple of other types of online job tools that you can use. One of the best ways is to just networking, especially as a part-time or an entry-level job, is, you know, do your relatives or your parents, friends, and acquaintances, you know, own a business or in some sort of business. I think that you can network that way. You can ask to do like a shadow opportunity. You may ask if you could spend a day with someone just to understand what that job is about. You may know adults from some of the activities that you're in, either, you know, faith-based activities or sports. And so, you know, it's okay to ask if anybody knows of job openings. I think that is sort of word of mouth is one of the best ways to really understand what are open and help get you considered for that role. I think there's also, there are placement agencies at this level. I don't know that that's the most effective way to do it. I think kind of using the internet and some of the online job posting websites are a really good source. In helping my oldest son, he would narrow it down. He would look on Indeed, kind of get a feel for what's out there in this area. And then oftentimes if he found something of interest, I'd say, okay, well, why don't you go look at their website to see what they have posted directly? And maybe there's a contact there. Maybe you could pop in and talk to that person. And so you can kind of use Indeed.com or something similar to get sort of a listing of what might be open, but then there's other ways that you can then research it after that. So I think that's been an effective way. You may also say, okay, I really like this restaurant or this store, like I want to work there. And I think going in person and talking to a manager is also not as used as much anymore. It's mostly online, but it can still lead to sort of possibilities. So
Hey, Amy,
yes, go ahead,
I'm
Mike.
sorry, I'm just going to add in there, you know, one of the things that I've encouraged my kids and also other kids that I've ran into is tell people that you're looking for a job.
Yes.
It seems so obvious, but oftentimes we lean on social media
Right.
or networking sites or Indeed.com, things like that. And I think one of the good ways is you're talking to people and they go, "Hey, what's going on, Mike?" And I go, "Hey, I'm looking for a job." And they go, "Oh, what are you looking for?" And then you strike up a conversation with someone about that. And it doesn't have to be uncomfortable or complicated. It can just be, "Hey, I'm just finishing up school, or I'm looking for a summer job." And they say, "Hey, what are you looking to do?" "I'm looking to make a couple dollars to, start figuring out what I want to do with my career. I'm looking to fill some time between school." It's totally okay. Like when I was pulling weeds, part of that job was meeting people and understanding what I liked and what I didn't like. I had a really bad boss. That was a great experience. And so it taught, just being in that job, even though it was not a great job, it lasted several summers. It helped me pay a little bit for college. I learned a lot about how a shopping mall works, which I never thought I'd be interested in, but it turned out to be really interesting. So I would just add on to, in this finding job openings, the number one way I find that most people I know find jobs is through people they know.
Right.
It's just, and telling people, maybe you're out with your parents and you see some other parents of a friend, you go, "Hey, I'm looking for a job. If you run into anything, please let me know." You'd be shocked how many times people go, "Oh, really? My neighbor Bob just happens to be looking for X or Y," and you have a conversation. So it opens some doors. But I think waiting for something to happen is a bad plan. And just, sometimes opening your mouth and just, even if you're uncomfortable doing it, which I know a lot of people are, especially for your first job, but being a little uncomfortable and saying, "Hey, I'm a little uncomfortable about this, but I'm looking for a job." I think that's totally fine. And most people get it.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. I do agree. I generally believe that people are helpful in their nature. And so I do think that if they can, they will help. And there is no shame in sort of telling people that you're looking for a job. And I do think that generally people are helpful and they're going to want to help.
Yep. One other thing I would encourage people to think about is think about what you like doing. Like if you're involved in music, or you like playing with kids in trampoline parks, which I heard somebody's going to have one of their boys playing with in the next day or so. I mean, maybe you like being around kids. So doing it, finding out about camp counseling. If you like music, maybe working in a music store or working in a local, with a local band to see how bands work. I think it's a great opportunity to explore around things you're interested in. Nothing worse than going to a job and watching the clock. And if it's something that you're interested in, or it's something that can build on your interests, like I'm interested in woodworking. So if I could, I might go to a woodworking shop and just go, "Hey, I'll work really cheap, maybe even free, to see if I can help here. I'll sweep up or whatever, but I'd like to understand a little bit more about woodworking." I find that business owners and bosses, they like seeing people with an interest in something. And so if you're interested in computer programming, you're interested in video games, think about what makes you interested in life, right? And it's hard to find a job playing video games, but you might be able to find a job selling them, or working at a store that offers video games, if there are actually retail stores that do that anymore. But I would just say, don't skip over the opportunity to do something fun. Work doesn't have to be a horrible way to get paid by the hour. It can be an opportunity to try to figure out if you really like something that you think you might be interested in.
Exactly. I think I would add on to that is you will get experience no matter what you do that you can apply for the rest of your life. And so there are certainly, any job is going to teach you sort of responsibility and being able to get there on time. Most jobs you have to interact with someone. You know, some jobs you're interacting with customers more than others, but you know, you'll get interpersonal skills, you'll get time management skills. These are all life lessons that are so important, and they'll help you regardless of what your future is. Hopefully you go to college, or you may, you know, join the armed forces, or you may start on your journey, your career path early. But any experience in any job is going to help you in the next one. And so you can take something from anything that you do and apply it to both your personal and your professional life. So think about what you might be interested in. As Mike said, he gave some examples. I gave some examples earlier on. And then we've talked about how you might find a job, find an opening. Networking is one of the best ways. So now what? Now you have to actually apply to that job, and I'll turn that. Mike will go into a little bit more detail in the next chart on what that might look like, whether it's a job application or it's a resume. Cover letters are not used as much anymore, but we'll talk a little bit about that. So you have to apply, and you have to put your best foot forward in that application process, whatever that might look like. And then you get an interview, most likely. Now there are some jobs that, you know, you go through an application process and you sort of qualify online. I know my son applied to UPS or FedEx or Amazon, and there was really no human interview. It was really an online qualification process. So that's becoming more common as well. But for the most part, you're going to interview. And so how do you then present yourself and your skills? And so we can talk about, you know, some of the skills that you've learned in school. You can apply to a job, and how you might think about how you present that. So we'll kind of get into now the details of landing that job, now that you've thought through what kind of job you might want to have. And so we can go to the next chart, and Mike, why don't I turn it over to you to kind of go through, you know, some of the application process, and we'll get into the interviewing process.
Sure. And if we could go back just real quick.
Sure.
I just wanted to make a point. I didn't want to interrupt, but I wanted to make a point about the last point on this, which is presenting yourself. I think it's important to consider many of your jobs will be via video. So finding a place, I'm lucky to have a nice office that I've been working in for a long time, but to be in a crowded room, to not be, you know, to be in a, be wearing a shirt that is stained with mustard from lunch, being aware of your physical presence on a call is really important. I've been with EXL about 18 months. My first interviews with EXL were during the pandemic, and so they were all via video, which I hadn't done before in my career. It was a first. I'd never just interviewed via video. And so taking some time to think, how am I presenting myself? How am I sitting? Am I slouching? Just being aware of your physical presence. It's important, and people will pay attention to that. So I don't think you should overly obsess about it, but I think it's important to think about, hey, how are people gonna see me on this video, and how am I going to sound? Do I have a good microphone? Is my camera in good shape? All those kind of things, those logistics can be really important, but only because if they don't work, it's distracting for you and for the interviewer. So spend some time thinking about that. That's all I wanted to say about that slide. So thank you. We can go to the next slide. So job applications, I feel like I'm 400 years old talking about this because Amy, when you first said, hey, no cover letters, I used to, in my previous job, I hired a bunch of people and I would distinguish them by who submitted a cover letter, because that usually meant that they were taking a little extra time and they were usually reading the job description and saying, hey, you asked for this, I do this awesome, and using that. So it's interesting to me that cover letters are not as big a thing. I think my experience with these documents are they're kind of your keys into the interview. So they have to be some people call them table stakes. Maybe if you heard that. Whereas like having a decent job application is important. Having a decent cover letter, having a decent resume. And I say decent because there's a minimum bar. And what can set you apart is not having you being on the bad side of that. Some people obsess about the color of paper. I remember people used to submit resumes that had perfume on them or would have a scent. I think that's a little over the top, or have pink paper or whatever. But I think taking some time to say, hey, what are people, how are people submitting job applications? Is this all on a screen? Is it a paper application? If it's a paper application, am I taking the time to write out clearly and carefully? If you don't, I see somebody who writes sloppily on a job application. If it's written, I'm going to go at maybe that person's work is sloppy. If I see a lot of typos in a job app, I'm thinking that person's not being careful and looking at what they're typing. So I think first of all, on the job application, the cover letter, resume, think through those, create those ahead of time. Make sure you know what you want to say about yourself. Think of the common questions in a job app. Hey, what are some of your interests? What do you want to be doing in 3 years? Some of these questions are common, and we'll talk about them more in the interview process, but oftentimes in job apps now, hey, what do you do for fun? Where have you worked before? What did you like about your last job? What classes do you take in school? What are you interested in school? All these are kind of good questions that you don't have to wait till somebody asks it. You can be thinking about that. So on the job app, the cover letter, if indeed people use them anymore, and on the resume, I would say take some time, think through it, look at examples, and get opinions from other people. There's plenty of resources who will look at a resume. I know there are a bunch of online ones. I'm talking about human beings here looking at your resume that you've printed out, and you bring it around and say, hey, what do you think about this? And people will read it, or you could email it, but have people read it, review it, and give you feedback on it. And then take that feedback to heart and make sure that these are better and better versions as you go along. Don't obsess if it's not perfect on day one. Just show that you've had the energy and time and interest in making it as good as it could be. I'm interested in, go ahead, Amy, you want to say something?
Yeah, let me just, so while we're on the topic of resumes, I think it's, as some of you may be going through the college application process, many of the attributes that you're going to list somewhere on that application or in the essay could be used on a resume. So I do think that you can kind of craft the resume along with your college application. And I think one of the questions that somebody has asked is, what would you put on the resume if you don't have a lot of experience? You can put volunteer activities on a resume if you have helped a youth group or helped coach helped coach a little league team. All of those volunteer activities also help build your experience of multitasking, of working with people. you can translate a lot of those experiences into work-related experiences. And, you know, at your age, your resume isn't going to be significantly long, right? It's going to be pretty short. It's going to be pretty brief. Most of the time for jobs that you're likely applying to, it's almost all digital. It's electronic applications. But it's good to have a resume, one that you build from ongoing. And it helps you then put your experiences in a job application. So having a resume, sort of having a framework of here's the experiences I want to make sure that I get across. Here's some classes that I'm particularly interested in. I think those are okay at this point to also put on a resume, I think will help, but it's helpful just to have a framework of what you want to convey to a potential employer. And while I talked about the cover letter, and it's not used very often because it generally was used is like you're sending a resume hard copy and you put a cover letter on the top of it to sort of distinguish yourselves. And it's not as much hard. It's mostly electronic now. But I would say a very nice touch, not a requirement, but a very nice touch, because I have a lot of people that I interview, is a thank you note. And the ones that I most appreciate are a handwritten, just a quick handwritten thank you note of like, I appreciate your time. Thank you for your consideration. I'm very interested in this job. Short, sweet, to the point, but it just is kind of a nice touch. And there's not a lot of people that do it anymore. And so as an employer, when I get one, I'm like, oh, look at that. That person took the time. They expressed their interest. And so if you have the time, it's a really nice touch just to send a thank you note.
Yay, that's a good idea. That's a great idea. That's a good point. I totally agree. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Nothing in it, and a physical paper, like
Yes.
paper fiber note.
Yes.
I agree.
Yes.
So just to kind of recap on this, because it is important to have these important documents, make sure that you've thought through them, even if you don't have a lot of information in your opinion to say you've worked at these things. You have done stuff. You've been in school. You've taken classes that are interesting to you. Extracurriculars. I'd like to know if people were on the volleyball team and were on the spelling club or whatever, if there's such a thing, right? But if you're interested in physics or you're interested in languages, I think that's great to put down. And it's something for you to talk about in your school experience. If your school experience isn't great, don't put down that your GPA was really low. So also be smart about, hey, these are things I'm interested in. You might not be great at them yet, but you're working on it, and because it's an interest of yours, I think people will pick up on that. And again, the extracurriculars or your personal interests also give the employer an opportunity to kind of see who you are and what you do and what you like, and it gives them a little window into who you are and whether they think you would be a good employer or employee or a good fit for the company. So don't obsess about styles and formats. There's plenty of those online, and I think places like Indeed and LinkedIn and others can point you to a standard format. Go with the standard format. I like a chronological. I don't know if you prefer something different. I like just a straight professional resume in terms of style. But that, I think it's just a personal style. But I wouldn't get too crazy about it. I would just try to get stuff out there and make sure it's spelled right. It makes sense. The sentences are right. Your punctuation's good. No dangling participles, that kind of thing. And you should be good. I think that's it for this. Unless Amy, you got anything else on the slide?
No, I think we're good.
Okay. So this has to be a gem. So I think we have to come up with really good stuff for this slide. So I look at an interview. We'll go through the points in a moment, but I want to say first is you have to think of this as you're interviewing the employer. And I don't think a lot of people think of that. So I have a list of my secret weapon in my interviews is I'm always asking them the questions. Hey, what kind of people you hire here? What's a star performer look like? Hey, Deli, how long have you worked here? Do you like it? Why do you like it? Do they give you free food? Like, what's nice about it? So I always have questions. So in those questions, I ask about 3 things. So again, these are my secret weapons, and they work. Every time I've used these, I've got hired. So feel free to pass this along. First set of questions is about the company. Hey, I read about this. Don't never walk into a company without having gone to their website, done a little research, and just writing down some questions or typing on your iPhone some questions about, hey, it looks like you guys are in this business. Can you tell me a little bit about the pizza delivery business? I don't know anything about it. Or about a grocery store. How does this place even work? People will like that you have done research and that you have questions. It shows that you're curious and that you're interested in learning more. Second thing, hey, if it's a part of a big entity like EXL, like I'm a part of EXL Health. So my second set of questions were, hey, Mr. VP, what's EXL Health like? This company has 44,000 people. What's EXL Health like? What's important? Why do you like being in EXL Health? Why did you come to EXL Health? Because I looked at his LinkedIn page before I came there. I had some questions for him too about, hey, why did you move from this department and this department within EXL? Again, it shows people that you're interested in not just the company but the department, and even that department you're going to work at a Target and they think they're looking for somebody in the pet toy aisle. That's cool. Hey, what's cool about pet toys? You can always find something to talk about in this job. And then the third thing is, tell me about the job. I'm really interested. So I read the job description, and you should always read the job description and make some notes for yourself. Hey, it looks like these people want me to work 60 hours a week. Hey, it looks like you want me to be here at 3 a.m. and work till 3 p.m. Is that right? Did I understand that right? What do people who are your best workers on this job? I love this question. Hey, your best worker who does this job today, what do they do? What do they like? What do they do that's great? And what are the characteristics of that person? They like the bullets on your screen. They might be on time. They might be curious. They might dress appropriately for the job, right? That sounds obvious, but I once had a guy come in the middle of winter with a pair of shorts on, and we had to go to a customer. And I'm like, hey, this is not going to work. So, common sense is an important attribute to show a future employer. Practice your handshake. So let me say that again. I actually practiced handshakes with my kids. Like, no, that's not how you handshake. And so here's Mike's quick guide to handshaking. I think they're right. Look the person in the eye, grab their hand, look at their hand first, right? Grab the hand and give it a good squeeze, like you're there, right? Don't have a wimpy handshake. Wimpy handshake might say to that person, maybe this person's too shy for this job. Just grab their hand, show your confidence. So those are my 3 questions. Let me summarize. Ask about the company, ask about the department, ask about the job. What are they looking for? What's a good person for this job? Then when you ask a question, listen. So listen carefully is correct. Active listening means you're not taking notes on your phone. I think that's distracting. I'm an old guy, so that's distracting to me. I think you should maybe take a little notebook and write some notes to yourself, but listen carefully. I like it when people take notes when I'm on an interview, because it shows me that they're focused on capturing what I said and what's important, and they're really listening. If you ask a question, let the person finish their answer. It's okay to have a little pause, and when they finish, go, hey, can I ask you another question about that? You mentioned that you have 3 boys. Is that correct? So how does it? that might be a personal question, I'm sorry, but I'm a parent too. How does this company deal with parents who have kids? How has that been for you at work? So if you're listening carefully, you can ask questions that make it more of a conversation and allow you to find out a little things about the company. Even a veteran like Amy, if somebody can bring down her guard in an interview, I can get her to open up about the company a little bit. Because once she knows we're having a conversation, maybe not, I've not interviewed Amy, but I think so. The idea would be, if we're having a conversation, I'm listening, I'm really trying to understand, because Amy probably meets 80% of the people there are just, they're coming in and they're trying to knock it down, but they might not be prepared like you were, asking good questions like you are, listening carefully, and shutting up, like letting the person speak and being courteous. I think it's important in when I interview somebody, I think their questions are more important than their answers to my questions. If you have no questions, I don't know who you are, because I've worked at EXL for 18 months and I still have questions. So how could you come here and not have questions? It doesn't make any sense. And I really do mean that. Be prepared means really do some research. If you don't care enough to do the research for the job, it's going to show up, and your likelihood of getting that job, I think, is diminished. And Amy's off mute, so I'm going to let her say something.
Yeah, I think there's one key element here that maybe we need to add here is go through a practice interview before you get there. And
Yep.
so I drive my sons bananas, because I'll just walk around the house and say, so tell me a little bit about yourself. Why do you want this job? What do you know about the company? And so I ask them questions in advance so they get practice, one, so they can think through that question, how they're going to respond to it, and that they can practice their answer in a safe space. They hate it, but it is helpful. It is very helpful, and I think they would admit to you that, you know, after the interview, they're glad that they've actually gone through it. So find, you know, an adult or a friend and do a mock interview. There are tons of places you can find out common interview questions. Go through some of those, prepare your answers, and then just do a mock interview, and you will be so much better prepared during the interview. You'll be calmer. You'll know how you're going to answer that question, because you're going to be nervous. I mean, everybody's nervous in an interview. I've been at this for a very long time, and I'm nervous in an interview. And so having prepared beforehand will serve you well.
Hey, Amy, I think that's a great, I would like to add on to that, because I think that's a great point. For my interview at EXL, I went and looked up the top 10 interview questions. Like, I just Googled top 10 interview questions. Like, what are people going to ask? Because I was like, I don't know. I don't do that many interviews. And it's like, what are people asking, and what should I be prepared for? And I wrote down all my answers. So I took the question, actually it was in a Word document, but I'm like, hey, okay, so they're going to ask me, what are my plans in 5 years? I should spend some time thinking about that. The worst time to think about that is in front of Amy when she's interviewing you. It's better to think like, hey, what am I thinking about 5 years? And I forget all the other questions, but you could just do a quick Google on top 10 interview questions, and you should be prepared to answer them like that, like you know. And again, it shows that you're prepared. It shows that you're thoughtful and that you respect this other person's time. And so I go through the questions. One thing that's not on here too is money. Hey, how much am I going to get paid? I don't think you should ask the question like that. But I think at the end of the interview, I always ask, I'm in sales, so I'm always going to ask, so when would this position start? If I were hired, when would I start? And this position, the job description didn't say exactly how much I'd be paid. Do you have a sense of the range that you'd be paid? And I don't know what the rules are, Amy, but whenever somebody says, how much are you looking to make? I always go, I thought this job paid about, I never tell people how much I make. That's really not, right? I'm sure if this job is paying $10 an hour, or $20 an hour, they should be able to say, hey, this is an $18 to $22 job,
Right.
based on skills. So I let them talk.
Yeah, I think at the level that we're like some of the jobs that we're talking about here for high schoolers, they're most likely they're going to post it and it'll be pretty clear like how much they'll pay. I think it's very fair. At the end of the interview, there are a couple of logistical questions that I think is appropriate to ask at the very end. Don't lead with those as questions, because then it's like, that's all you really want to, that's all you really care about. But some of the questions that you want to make sure you ask if they have not offered this information is, what are the next steps in this process? Like when might I hear whether I've gotten this job? You may want to ask, what are the working hours? What are the requirements of the jobs? Do I need a uniform? Do I, those sorts of questions I think are generally a good interviewer is going to tell you all of that information, but don't be afraid to ask it if they didn't cover it. And if the salary isn't posted, I think it's a very fair question to ask towards the end of the interview. Certainly before you accept a job, you're going to need to know that information.
Totally agree. And I would add one thing too. Amy, you probably have a better pulse on this than I do, but especially entry-level positions, there's such a need for good people who are curious and willing to work and willing to learn, that you should be confident that you've got plenty of spots that you could go take a job at. And so be confident and don't be afraid to say, hey, you know what, this job looks like it only works the weekends. Does that mean every weekend I'd have to be here? I had my son ask you a great question for an interview in downtown Chicago. He said, hey, this job looks like it gets off at 1 a.m. And I'm not comfortable taking public transportation at that time. Is there any opportunity to move the hours around so that I could work with the bus and train schedule so it's safe? So I think you have to, and by the way, they said, no, it's 1 a.m. or go home. And he said, yeah, my safety is too important. So I think you have to be confident enough in your ability to go, hey, it looks like this job would be a good fit. It looks like I feel like I'd be a good candidate. Can you tell me a little bit more about this? Because I'm uncomfortable about it. Or if they say, hey, we'd like you to start tomorrow, and say, hey, could I have 24 hours to think about it? I'd really like to think. You don't have to feel pressured to do one thing or another. It's perfectly fine for you to go, hey, this job seems really nice. And you've been awesome, but I'd really like 24 hours if you don't mind to think about it. And then get back to you tomorrow. Would that be all right? I respect people when they're confident enough to say, hey, I'd like to give it some thought, because that means if they work for me, they're going to be giving their work thought as well. So that's it. There's plenty of keys to a successful interview. There's plenty of good advice on the internet and plenty of bad advice. So just try to get a good blend. It's like Yelp reviews, right? You want to get several reviews and try to compare them and see what works. But I think through what Amy and I have told you today, as well as these good points on the slide, I think you're in pretty good shape. And I think that's the last slide, right, Kelly?
Yeah, on that, just let me add a little bit on that last piece, which is relate your skills to the job's requirements. You have built skills in all interactions that you've had to date in school, extracurricular activities that you can draw upon in a job interview. So if you're on some sort of sports team, right, that has taught you how to work well with others and collaborate. And so that's sort of working with others well and collaborating is a key attribute that all employers look for. Juggling your schoolwork and extracurricular activities have taught you time management skills. So talk about that. Is like, I have this full time, I have, these 2 extracurricular activities that take up X number of hours a week, and I have to juggle that with my schoolwork. And so that's a key aspect that employers look for. So there are a couple of things that you have learned along the way, even in, your short life, that employers are going to value and that you can talk about. You may have written an essay for a, some sort of award. And even if you won or you didn't win, you took the initiative, right? And so taking initiative is also a very key attribute that you can talk about. You can relate that to some experience that you've had. So taking initiative, working well with others, time management skills, prioritization, these are all things that you have learned that you can talk about.
Yeah, awesome. And I think something that has resonated with all the sessions that we had so far is that every opportunity is an experience that will build for the future. Even though you're not going to end up working with that from here to 10, 20 years, anything that you do, any experience will be that foundation for what you're going to do in the future. And I want to go really quick into a couple of notes that I took because I love to take notes. And I want to recap of a couple of the things that you guys said throughout the session that I think that was, very important. So when you're looking for a job, you have different resources, you have Indeed, and one of the best networking is your relatives. Ask. Don't be afraid to ask. It's okay. Hey, I'm looking for a job. And be clear, what you're looking for. If it's something specific, what's your passion, if you can volunteer. Be sure when doing an interview, your camera is set up, you don't have anything in the background, no one is running, around you, the microphone is good, make a test video with someone, hey, do I look good? Do I hear good? All of that, be careful. Pay attention to the typos in your resume, read it, give it to someone. Hey, can you read this for me? Do I have any errors? So because when they are seeing that, they can say, hey, if this person is not really careful doing the resume, then I don't know if it will be a good fit, for the job. And if you're looking for experiences to put in your resume, about your high school, any clubs that you can, get in, volunteers, nonprofit organizations are always looking for volunteers, for interns, for high schoolers that want to get a little bit more experience. The 3 keys, the secret sauce of Mike, when you go to an interview, 3 questions about the company, about the department that you are going to, to go in, and about the job, the description, that person, how that person is going to look like. So write it down. That's the secret sauce, those 3 questions. And then when you ask questions, listen carefully to the answers, so then you can have a conversation. Practice your handshake. That's very important. I haven't done that with my kids, and I'm going to do it from now on. Let me see your handshake. Look me in the eye, have a strong handshake. Have questions. Do your research the company. One good thing that Mike did, the top questions, that could change through the time. What are the top questions that they could ask me, or top questions that I can ask them? So be prepared. And then at the end of the interview, if I were hired, when would I start? If they don't say, how much are you going to earn? You can ask those questions, very politely, but it's your right to know what will be the next step. So I think I did a little bit of recap of everything that I had in my notes for today. And I hope this session was very, very valuable to you, as it was for me as well. So I want to invite you all to share this video, this content with high schoolers that you know that are looking, for more information, and from professionals that can tell you, hey, this is what you need to do. So we have just a couple minutes before we go, but I don't know if Amy and Mike, do you want to do like a, one last thought before we go?
Yeah, I think I'll go. I think my last thought is also kind of push yourself outside of your comfort zone as well. So again, you're going to learn something in anything that you do. And so don't be hesitant to try new things. This is the time in your life that you will learn what you like and what you don't. And so the wider variety of experiences you have now will help you later in life really narrow in what you want to do, because you're going to spend a lot of time at your job. And so now is the time to kind of look at different opportunities and see what you might like, what you might not like, and that will help you figure out what you want to do with your career.
I would add, I totally agree. I would add that fortune favors the bold. So don't, to kind of piggyback on what Amy said, don't be afraid to go after it. Just because you don't know anything about being a carpenter or taking a job at a business that you know nothing about, you've had to learn all this stuff in school so you can learn, so you can figure it out. And that's what most of us have done throughout our careers. Amy wasn't born as an HR person. And so be bold and show your eagerness to learn. If you're bold and you go for a difficult job that you think may be out of your reach, you might be surprised and find that not only are you hired and it's the perfect job and you learn it and you love it and you learn a bunch. So take some chances. I agree with Amy. Now's the time to do that. And even if the job won't pay you, I know this sounds a little crazy, but you can be an intern. In one of my businesses, I was burned out and I decided to become an intern in Australia on a plane ride real late one night. I decided that's what I want to be an intern again, because this whole work thing is too hard. And so I found a guy in Australia who would hire me as an intern. And so I went and worked in Brisbane, Australia for a month. And I would have never thought of that before, but he needed help. I had the right skills, and it was crazy enough that he was willing to do it. So I would just say, even if you think, hey, maybe that business in your area is not, I don't know enough, I don't have enough experience, there's not enough on my resume, go for it. All they can do is be impressed that you went for it and give you a gentle no. And I don't think no is so bad. No, I'm in sales, so no means maybe. And so I think you should take every no as a maybe and just and keep going and be bold.
Awesome. So thank you so much, Amy and Mike. And I just wanted to add two things that I did not mention that are in my notes. To send a handwritten thank you note after the interview is the first time that I hear, and I think it's very, very, very good point. And also practice your interview before going there. So with your mom, with your siblings, with a friend, with someone that can, take you through that process. So thank you so much. This is the last session for this section, but we will have another. We will start this career launch again this year, 2023. So be on the look for those dates in the future, and always invite a youth. Share this video with any youth that high school or middle school, so they can be prepared for the future. So thank you again, Mike and Amy, for being here with me tonight. Special thanks to the Career Lounge Live sponsor, EXL, a leading data analytics and digital operations and solutions company. If you want to learn more about EXL, go to exlservice.com, exlservice.com. Thanks to their sponsorship, we are able to bring this lounge to you at no cost. So thank you again, Mike and Amy, and all the students that jump in with us live tonight, and see you again in the next session.
Thank you. Thanks,
Thank
Sally.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.